Rabbi Morris. It's beautiful to hear so much knowledge, and we learn always wonderful things. Yeah, it's true. The community wanted to preserve the minhag, and therefore they had what was called a 3-year waiting period before people were able to be electors. And in our synagogue, we had to bring it down from 3 years to 1 year. And we call these people seat holders before they become members. So it exists. All right. Talking about the minhag of the Spanish Portuguese, we cannot talk really about the minhag without looking at the origins, the original. The original one is, of course, from Amsterdam, and we are very honored for somebody who can tell us a lot of minhagim that are in Amsterdam, that we believe are authentic, as opposed to the one practiced in New York, in Philadelphia, and other Spanish Portuguese communities. I believe that if we hear authentically from Amsterdam, it would be wonderful. And who else except one born in Amsterdam and knows it very well, except for Reverend Dr. Alex Vega, who has been part of Mikveh for so many years, and really very honored whenever a man that of great knowledge, and also of course Chokhmah, and really a Yirei Shamayim person. It is a great pleasure to always hear from him. So it's our pleasure to introduce you, Dr. Vega.
Okay, it's nice to have this opportunity to tell a little bit the way I experienced Judaism as a Portuguese Jew in Amsterdam. And actually not really in Amsterdam. So I'm going to tell you how I went through life a little bit and experienced this. Actually, I didn't live in Amsterdam. I lived outside of Amsterdam. My father was the caretaker of the cemetery of the congregation, which was in a village called Ouderkerk, and I grew up in Ouderkerk. And there were no other Jews in town, and it was about 8 miles away from the big synagogue, so we could go there on Shabbat. And we had services at home. My father was very particular in keeping all the services at home on Shabbat, exactly the way we do it in the synagogue, but then without a minyan. So I learned from a very young age already how to conduct services. You know, as a little boy, I was allowed to play outside, but when he started to sing Shirat Hayam Az Yashir Moshe, I had to come in and join him. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I learned. And so one of the things, and actually the way I grew up also meant that I didn't go to a Jewish day school. All the influence that I had in Judaism was Spanish, was Portuguese. I never used the word Shabbos. I never said Rosh Hashanah or something. We were completely Portuguese, although my mother was an Ashkenaziyah, but she followed the rule. In Amsterdam, they say the wife is a parv knife. So when she turns, you know, she turns milchik, she's milchik, and she turns vlees, she's vlees. So my mother was Portuguese too. So one of the things is let's say that we had in Amsterdam was the pronunciation of the Hebrew. Nowadays, it's not so much anymore as in my days, because all these kids that live in the congregation now, they go to the Jewish day school where they learn Ivrit pronunciation, the modern Hebrew. They speak to the non-Portuguese comrades and learn about all you know, they say good Shabbos to each other. That in my time, that wasn't like that. So let me say something about the pronunciation we had of the Hebrew. It's like here we say the Ngayim, and so you say Shabuot. There was no way to say Shavuot or something like that. That didn't go. Another thing that you don't have here is that at the end of the word there is a hey with a dot in it, dagesh and mapik. Then you say hallelujah ha, for instance, and we say in the Kaddish Yeheh Shemeher Rabba Mevarach. And so that's one of the things that changes from here. Another thing is the Gimel. The Gimel, and I hear that our rabbi also once in a while sounds the Gimel without a dagesh in it as a Gimel. You say Magen Abraham, I hear that all the time. And so that actually had an influence not only on the way we did Hebrew, but also on the way, let's say, Portuguese words were pronounced, because there were many Portuguese expressions that were still alive and that are still alive in Amsterdam in the day-to-day speech. Because the Jews kept speaking Portuguese until the middle of the 19th century, and the 2 generations after that kept up a lot of words that in their daily speech. So we would, for instance, if you go to the synagogue, then you sit on the seat, and under the seat is a little place where you could put your books and your talit, with a little, and you sit on the lid of it, and that's called a gewete. But it's really gaveta. But the Portuguese used to say gewete. So the Portuguese changed into Dutch with the ge instead of the gimel. For instance, there are people that say on the Haggadah on Pesach was called Haggadah. There are many Portuguese that said it. I didn't do it. My father didn't do it. He was more particular. But there's many Portuguese that would say Haggadah. And for instance, Tzom Gedalia, the fast day that comes after Rosh Hashanah, Tzom Gedalia, which it's against the grammar. But I must say, now I was, not long ago, I was in Holland, and there's people there that try to very hard to keep the tradition going, and they talked to me about it, and they said, Tzom Gedalia. I couldn't believe that a Portuguese would see something, say, Tzom Gedalia instead of Gedalia, but you know, that's how things are going. Another thing that is striking is that when the Portuguese in Amsterdam say the bracha over the wine, they say Borei Peri Hagafen. And I didn't know, so I knew that the Oriental Jews, the Sephardim from the Orient would say Hagefen. But I said, why would we say Hagafen? Now I come here in Mikveh Israel, and I hear the rabbi say Borei Peri Hagafen. I said, oh, that's probably because he's from Egypt. but then I looked up in old tefillot, old prayer books that I had on my shelf from years ago, and they also said Borei Peri Hagafen. Hagafen, we say. So where does the Gafen come from? I first thought that was assimilation to the Ashkenazim, but that is a thing that I found out later. There is no way that Portuguese would in that way assimilate. And it has to do with a movement in the late 19th century of a bunch of rabbis that thought that the Hebrew that we use in our prayer books was not really grammatically just. Okay, so and they changed many things. So when it says, for instance, Yerushalayim Irach, Yerushalayim your city, when you say in the Tefillah, then they changed it into Irecha because they thought that was better Hebrew. And so all these things in Amsterdam are different from all the other Sephardim in the world. They changed the way actually the Ashkenazim do it, but not because of the Ashkenazim, because they thought that was the right grammar. And Hagafen also has to do with that. Now, let me, so there are many expressions that I grew up with that we used. For instance, we didn't say sukkah. We said kabana. That's the word you use in Amsterdam. We didn't say a prayer book. The prayer book for the holidays was called Minhagim, and the prayer book for Kippur was called Kippur book. And so we spoke a different language from the Ashkenazim. And what Rabbi Morris was saying right now about how open the Spanish Portuguese congregation is to Ashkenazim to come in, that didn't happen in Amsterdam until not long ago. There was an agreement with the Ashkenazi congregation, which actually is much, much larger than the Sephardic congregation in Amsterdam, that if you are born in one congregation, you cannot switch over to another one. If your father is in Portuguese, you are in the Portuguese congregation. There's no way to switch over to the other and the other way around. So there were no people in our congregation when I grew up that had Ashkenazic surnames. Everybody had a Spanish, Portuguese family name. So, and I must also say that many of the Sephardim in Amsterdam were not open at all to be familiar with the Ashkenazim. Let me give you an example. When you wear your talit, right? First of all, the tzitzit, the number of windings on the tzitzit is with Ashkenazim different from the Sephardim. We did not allow to have one of those talitot in the synagogue. And I must say, when I buy my tzitzit, to wear, the first thing I do is take out the tzitzit and rewind them so in my own way. So another thing is on the talit that Amsterdam had.
How is it done?
Huh?
How is it done?
We use the Yud-K, Vav-K. Just 10, 5, 6, 5, like God's name. And I must say, when I look here in what is here in the city, the talitot are bought in a general bookstore or whatever, in a Judaica store, and they are not being fixed. In Amsterdam, I'm not sure how it is today, but in my day, these things were not allowed. Another thing, but even more important, is that talit these days has a collar. I don't know how you call that actually. You know, there's a strip around the neck, so it will be strong, it will not tear, and some people have it very embroidered and beautiful. Huh? Keter? Atara. Portuguese don't have that. There was a story told of someone before the war that was so strict about that he said, take that bandage off your So these things lived very strongly. The Portuguese in Amsterdam, especially, actually, the more the people are less observant in the mitzvot, the more proud they were of their being Portuguese, and they very strongly felt like that. Okay, now, also Hebrew writing. When I learned, I just lived in Ouderkerk, but once a week I took the bus to Amsterdam and had a Hebrew school there. And then we learned how to write Hebrew. We wrote, not the cursive that you have today, we wrote Rashi's script, the way Ashkenazim do that. But I didn't know the script, the hand script. And when I went to high school, to a Jewish high school, I had to teach myself to learn the modern the cursive script. So you see that we really lived in a different community, even though we lived next to each other. There was a big difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and everybody really kept his tradition very, very clearly. Now, the most important thing that for Portuguese Jews in Amsterdam is the building of the synagogue. What we call the esnoga, and in Amsterdam they call it snoge. The esnoga makes such an impression on the people that go there to pray. It is, you feel, and I felt it like that as a kid, you feel the presence of God there when you come into that building. It's not like here, part of the big building, it's in separate use. You almost know about it, how the building is, and there is no electricity, so there's only candlelight. And but the feeling of a religious experience in the Snoge really got to you. I must say, one tradition in Amsterdam is when the Samas is the custodian, the Shamash, call it Samas in Amsterdam. When he opens the door, you know what he does? He has a big key, it's a huge key. He knocks on the door before he puts puts in the keyhole. Why? Because there are angels inside, and you want to warn them to go away before you come in. That's why. That's what the Shamas does, and you can see it when you go to the sea. You see there are little nicks on the copper plate around it. So these Snoges, and I must tell you, I have now grandchildren in Israel. This last summer, we were together in Holland, and I obviously took them to show the Snoge. And there's a little one, 3 years old. He walked in that and he said, "Efu hamelech v'hamalka." He said, "Where are the king and the queen?" He felt it, that there is something special to the building. Anyway, especially the people that are not very observant in their religious lives, and they are Portuguese, the most important thing for them is the Snoge. That really defines their identity. Today, I must say, things have changed a little bit. It's now a more of a monument than it is a museum, than it is in a religious place. You have concerts there now, and so this, in order to, that's all for financial reasons, you have to do it like that. It's not exactly, so it hurt me a little bit to see all that, but that's the way it is. So no, so what did I learn at home when we had this Shabbat service, and obviously during the week too? Reading Haftarah. You know, I think here too, boys can read Haftarah. But in Amsterdam, the Haftarah was only read by boys. Actually, the last time in your life that you read the Haftarah is on your bar mitzvah, and from then on, you're not a boy anymore. Other things have changed a little bit like that too, but that's how it was still in my days. So my father made sure that me and my brother, on Shabbat morning, we read Haftarah. So my first time, and then when I knew it a little bit, I did it in the Synagogue when I was 8 years old. It was my first Haftarah. Another thing that happened, and you know, after you, another minhag that they had in Amsterdam, after you, as a boy done with going to Haftarah, you walk to the Chacham, and he gives you a bracha. That is part of the Haftarah experience. Another thing that happened when I was 8 years old was Dotar. You just heard about Dotar, how that, you know, there was an organization that was established immediately after the Jews came to Holland in 1615 or so. They already founded it in order to help orphan girls to have the means, financial means to get married, and the members of that congregation, of that society, also had their daughters allowed to get that money. And how do you get that money assigned? By a lottery. And they still do that today. On the day, so it's a lottery. So you have these silver balls that they carry from the office building into the big synagogue. There's a big procession, and then there is a little boy who has the honor of pulling out the names of the girls from the ball, and then that is the lottery. And those people, the names are read out, and then they are the ones that deserve getting paid the money at the day that they're getting married. So the first time after World War II, it was in 1948, they re-established that minhag, and I had the honor of doing the lottery then. So it was a great honor. So Dotar is, it still plays an extremely important role in the congregation today. And when do they do that lottery? On Purim Shushan.
Oh.
Because it's lottery, and always every year, the day after Purim, they do that. Actually, they call it Purim Shushan. I think here in the Tefillot, it's called Shushan Purim.
Wrong.
Huh?
Wrong. It's wrong. It's
wrong, right? So keep the tradition, Purim Shushan. Then I became, and I also learned how to read the parasha. My father was very strict on that. We read the parasha also when I was 8 years old. You know, I had to read the first kapitel, as we knew it, the first aliyah, and he corrected me on every tiny mistakes that I made. Not always very pleasant, but that's how I learned how to read the parasha. And why did he do that? Because that was a tradition that existed in Amsterdam before the war. Before the war in Amsterdam, there was a boys' club that met on Shabbat afternoon, and they got some teaching there. But the main things that they were doing there was reading the parasha from a sefer. So first they had Mincha, and then one of the boys that was already bar mitzvah was read then. But then after that, all the other boys got turns to read from the parasha, and it was very important for the Jews for the Portuguese in Amsterdam that their sons would know how to do that. And it was, and they, you know, it was. There's an expression in my family that's called parasa trappen, to beat parasa, when you sit for hours and try to learn it for your performance. Very important. So my father took that over to us, and we had to learn it also. That was a very strong minhag in Amsterdam for boys to be able to read the parasha. And then I get my bar mitzvah. So what happened on my bar mitzvah? We had a lezing. A lezing is the word lezing really means reading. Actually, the word reading is an important word in Amsterdam. We don't say daven or when I think it's here also. When you say the let's say the mincha, you say mincha lezen, to read mincha. Is that you say that here too?
To
right? Read. And actually, that not only that you say reading it's not only reading the prayers. The chazan is called a forelezer, and there's another difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. And that's maybe something you're going to talk about. That in the Ashkenazim, the chazan is a singer. Voorzanger in Dutch means singing in front of the congregation. In the Portuguese, they call it voorlezer. He reads in front of the congregation. It's much more important for the chazan to read correctly than to sing beautifully. When there is an audition of a new chazan, you know that they pay the most attention to see if he's a good chazan? If he can read Bameh Madlikin on Friday night. That really, if he can do that, he passed the test. And there's no reading there, that's just chanting a little bit. Anyway, so lezing is reading. And
you spell it?
How you spell?
How do you write lezen?
Lezen, L-E-Z-E-N. Lezen. Just the verb is L-E-Z-E-N, lezen. And lezer is someone who reads. I think the word lening in Ashkenazic has to do with it. It comes from the same origin. For parasha, to read from the Torah. Anyway, and lezing is the same as a mildadura. You know what a mildadura is. The people come together and they read from the portion of the week, the Torah portion, and read a little bit haftarah, and they say kaddish afterwards. They do that. You get people together to do that in order to celebrate something. So one way to do it is a commemoration on a nachala, on a yahrzeit of someone. That is a mildadura. But you also, in Amsterdam, it's a very strong tradition to do this on happy occasions. So if you, let's say your bar mitzvah is on the Shabbat, then your birthday is during the weekend before that, and on your birthday evening, you have a lezing. And I lived in Ouderkerk, and my father organized, he rented a bus so to take the people from Amsterdam to come to our home, and we had a large lezing, and it was also first time after World War II that this was done, on a grand scale, and there was a big article about it in the newsletter of the congregation on what the lezing. It was great that the tradition was reestablished. And so what you do in the lezing, people sit and originally it was only for men. These days the women come too. And you read the parasha of the next week. Everybody gets a turn to read, and obviously because they are Portuguese, they know how to do it. Everybody knows how to do it. And then they sing the Kaddish together, and they sing. And then, and one of the things that they never skip is to sing together the Shirat Hayam, Az Yashir Moshe. It's a very popular song in the congregation. Az Yashir Moshe. I noticed that one time there was a lezing in honor of the 80th birthday of Chacham Pereira, and I was sitting next to opposite to me was a lady that I had no idea. I mean, sometimes she came to the synagogue. I didn't know she was anything. But when we started to sing the Shirat Hayam, she all perked up and sang and knew it exactly and sung it loudly. So this is an important thing in the Minhag of Amsterdam singing. Another thing that we like to sing is Baruch Haba. There's also, we do the Hallel and then Baruch Haba, Baruch Haba. This week, my daughter in Israel, she doesn't know much about Portuguese anymore. I mean, she married an Ashkenazi, she lives there. There's a few things that I could tell her she knew. So she told me that she was sitting with a little boy, the same boy that talked about the Melech and the Malka. She teaches him now Baruch Haba when they're riding together in the car. And she said that's what they were singing on the wedding of your grandparents. So he got on the phone and he said, "Can I come to your wedding?" So anyway. So that was my bar mitzvah, and so actually from Boaz, some of you.
I don't want to interrupt, but I have some questions about your bar mitzvah and what they do in Amsterdam. What aliyah is the bar mitzvah boy called for?
I think the fifth one.
I'm just saying.
You want to know the order?
Who does bells and bands?
What is it?
Who does Yahovah's Atzechaim?
Okay. I can go through that for you. First, there is a strict order of importance of people. When there are seven people are being called up, a lot of 7 capitals, and the highest one is Shivini, that's Mashlim. Then comes Shlishi. That's the third one. Then the sixth. Same here.
Yes,
Then the
yes.
fourth one and the fifth one. So the youngest one gets 5th. Yeah. And even if you're bar mitzvah, no, wait, I say it all wrong. He gets maftir after the bar mitzvah gets maftir. Oh, no, the guy. See, the maftir is they don't call up by name in Amsterdam. When you get maftir, you say maftir. That's probably because the boy is not mature yet, and they just don't call him maftir by name, except on your bar mitzvah. Then you
don't make sure that the bar mitzvah is called as one of the 7, so that it's an actual aliyah?
No, not in Amsterdam.
Wait. On regular Shabbat is maftir for a boy, right?
Yeah.
But on the bar mitzvah of the boy, it's the 5th, right?
No, I was wrong.
Okay.
The bar mitzvah also gets maftir, and he's called by name. Actually, I can tell a little bit about how it goes in the synagogue. The Portuguese language is still kept intact in Amsterdam. There are 4 occasions where Portuguese is still used in the synagogue. One of them is announcements. When you say, for instance, the Chazan says, you have to say Yanalevi Abo because it's Rosh Chodesh in the Gamidah. He said, Dirao vozesa Gamidah o verso de Rosh Chodesh. He says that in Portuguese. And there are many of these family things. He said, for instance, don't forget to make Nirup. And if you didn't make the Nirup, so you can rely on the one that the Chacham made. That's all said in Portuguese. There are many of those. That's all is. The other thing is, when you, and that has to do a little bit with your question, when the Chazan announces who is going to have the honors in the Torah service, who opening the doors, who is carrying the sefer, all done in Portuguese. Not only that, they are also in the daily language. They are referred to by their Portuguese name. Opening the doors of the Echal is called abrir, and doing Hakba'ah is called levantador. That's the levantador who does that. And then you have and then the boys do the small mitzvahs, we call it. Taking the sefer out and unwrapping the sefer and so on, putting the rimonim on. That's the boys do that, except on Kippur. Okay.
On Kippur, adults do it?
On Kippur, the oldest people in the shul do it on. Oh no, in Shachrit, it's the 2 oldest people, and Micha is the Shamash who does it. Sorry, I'm not sure if they keep all these rules still, but I must say that I have been witnessing very many discussions about what is appropriate to do in the Snocha. Very often, the Chazan makes a mistake, or they don't know, and then you get all these discussions. And I heard all these discussions, and that's why I learned. I know how it has to be. That's very important to me, and so still today I get calls from Holland to ask me, "What do you know this and that?" So because my father was very involved in it, and I learned all these things. How much do I have? How much time
you want?
Let me say something about, and one of the things that are so important is the melodies that the Chazan uses. And and I must say that the choice of melodies that has to be done is more elaborate than it is here in the United States. For instance, I'll give you an example. The beginning of Mincha, Lam Naseach Malagitit, with Ashrei, there are 2 tunes for it in Amsterdam. One is for during the week, and one is for Shabbat and Yom Tov. So if you do, and then on the week, say Lam Naseach Malagitit Livnei Korach Midbor Ma'ididot, very very flat. But on Shabbat, Lam Nasya Nalagitit Livne Korach Mizmor Ma'yedidot. It's very, very more melodious. And for instance, there are many of those things. For instance, we don't say Techinot today, Tachanunim, but if you do it, then there is a difference between Mincha and Shachrit. And at the end of it is, what is it? Zachur King Afar Anachnu. At the end of what the Chazan says, and in the morning you say Zachur King Afar Anachnu, and in Mincha you say Zachur King Afar Anachnu. Now, if the Chazan does that wrong, he will hear about it.
I love it.
Another thing is, another thing is when you have at the Amar Riviel Nazara Barim Michalina, we say that twice. We say it on Friday night after Lachadudi and in the morning before Naleno. Also, the ending of that is different, and you have to do it right. I'm not sure that I can do it. Shalom Rablo Toratecha, and on Friday night you do Elam Michshol Adonam Noslen Amo Yiten Adonam Yivarechet Gamo Bashalom, and in the morning you do Adonam Yivarechet Gamo Shem Noslen Gamo Yiten Adonam Yivarechet Gamo Bashalom. See, those things play an extremely big role in the Synagogue in Amsterdam. Then also another thing is the Shirat Hayam. Another thing, there's the Shirah in Amsterdam on Shabbaton, and on top you sing Yashir Moshe. A little bit different from here, but I think I like it more in Amsterdam than here. It's more. I think it's more melodious and it flows better. But anyway, that's a personal opinion. During the week, sometimes the Shirah is also sung. On Rosh Chodesh and on Chanukah. And in Amsterdam, they have a different tune for that. Not the same tune that you just sing quickly. We have a separate tune for that. On it's on decrease. That's how you do it. And the whole congregation sings it together like that. What else? Another thing I want to tell you about tunes in the Synagogue is the Duchan, that the Kohanim sing. Here, I hear that the Kohanim just repeat what the Chazan does. But in Amsterdam, actually, what the Chazan does is only an introduction to what the Kohen has to sing. So they're saying, V'yishmerecha, says the Chazan, and then on Shabbat, the Kohanim sing, V'yishmerecha, and on Yom Tov, they sing, V'yishmerecha. So there's different in tunes, and you have to know it. And on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, it's a Shabbat tune, not the big tune. I tell you another thing where the Portuguese is being used is in the, obviously, I think you know that, is in the prayer for the government. We say it's the original tune, and when it comes to, and Hashem will bless, and then who is going to be blessed? Here they say the Nasi, whatever, it's all set in Hebrew. At that point, in Amsterdam, it changes to Portuguese. And they say, Sua Majestade, Her Majesty, the Queen of Holland, and of the Netherlands, and so on, and a whole list of things of governors and the mayor of the city of Amsterdam. They're all being mentioned in that Portuguese section. Actually, now they have to change that because they're going to have a king in a few months, and I'm not sure, someone must be in charge of changing that text. I don't know how they do that. Anyway, so that is, and then you have also the Mishberach. When you say after you have been called to the Torah, the Chazan makes a Mishberach for you, and all these blessings go in Portuguese. You give a blessing to your wife, and it says sua casa, which means really your house, but by mentis it's your wife. Suas filhos, your children, and there's a whole list of Portuguese expressions that are being used there. And that's still being done today. there's one thing that singing in the congregation, it's very important that all people sing together. And when I was a little boy, I heard it around me all the time. Oh, it was after World War II. We remember that the synagogue was big and there were so many people here, and there was also, you know, there was so much spirit here. So I and a few friends of mine felt obliged to fill the space. We sang as hard as we could to make the sound good. I don't think they experienced this the way we wanted it, but that's the way it is. Then there is one more thing I want to say, which is actually, I think I didn't like myself that much. That is, they developed over the years elaborate singing of Kaddish and Kedusha on special occasions, on Hanukkah, on holidays. Very, you know, beautiful music. Sometimes it was from important composers. There is something from Haydn that Chazan would sing, and you stand and you get the Kedusha, and then you stand like that, you know, you have to, and then you wait for 5 minutes until he's finally singing. Comes to the Kadosh Kadosh. Very long tunes, and I don't know them myself. I never liked that part of the service, and especially on Simchat Torah, that was very, very more elaborate. And I must know that there are many people that you know, older people than I that grew up and knew the service of Simchat Torah before the war. They were very excited about it. When the day Chanukah was, when the Simchat Torah was coming up, they were talked to them about it and started singing all these songs, and there was a choir. They loved that, but it's not a thing that never, you know, stuck with me. So anyway, so I told a little bit. There's many more things I can say, but I think, but I must say that being Portuguese in Amsterdam really made you feel belong to that, and you really felt very much different from the Ashkenazim. And since there were no Ashkenazim allowed in the synagogue, there was really a division when it comes to religious things. And as you heard, that the Portuguese had high pride in their ancestry, and that really lived in my time. There are still people that are a little bit like that. You know, whenever you sit, especially people that are not observant, when they walk in the synagogue, they all have gravidade, which is gravity, and that's how Portuguese has to be. And that is what I grew up with around me. My father, luckily, was not so much like that. He saw the essence of things, but well, hopefully that will keep going. Although many of the things, there are many Ashkenazim now members of the congregation. They change the rules. And the people, as I already told you, in their daily language, they are not strict with our Portuguese pronunciations anymore. But that's the way it is, and I hope that we can keep the tradition going.
Was it only men who could not change their congregation, or could women?
Women, it depends on who you marry.
Only after you're married.
After you marry, you belong to the congregation of your husband.
Meet someone from the other congregation.
In later years, they changed the rules. The last decennia. Now, if you can prove that you, if the woman is Portuguese, she and her husband can join the congregation. And if your mother is Portuguese, you can join the congregation. These things have changed. So there are now many. If I get their newsletter and I look at people that have their birthdays that month, for instance, I see all kinds of Ashkenazic names.
But if a woman is simply Ashkenazi with no claim to Portuguese ancestry, can she go to the?
I don't think that you can do that now. No, you have to show some kind of an ancestry that is Portuguese.
Can you make it up?
I know that before the war there were other Portuguese communities in Holland and Rotterdam and The Hague. And today there's a synagogue in the suburbs of Amsterdam that's because that's where most of the people live. Are they like carbon copies of the synagogue with all the exact same traditions, or are there like slight differences?
Well, about Rotterdam, I don't know. About The Hague, I know that existed until the war. Was very much like Amsterdam. Sometimes, the Chacham that we had after the war was Chacham in The Hague before the war. And sometimes he sang something that was a little different than my father was used to, and he said, "Oh, that's The Hague." But it is very little difference. And nowadays they have the synagogue in the suburb, in Amstelveen, where most of the Jews live, and the synagogue in Amsterdam has small attendance because nobody lives there, which is very difficult. When they started to that synagogue in Amstelveen, there was a lot of opposition, and I still know people that were very much against it, because you know the synagogue has to be where it is. And if you want to be a Portuguese, you just buy yourself a house in walking distance. Don't do that. And then, but you know, they lost that, because the people live there, and you have to live with where all the other people live too. But when there was one issue that came up there. So in the synagogue, when you lead services, you have to have an
Top hat.
top hat. And so even during the week, people come just, you know, not dressed very well, and then when they have to be the chazan, put that thing on. And there are a few of them in the back, you take the one that fits you, and then you put it on. So they wanted to do that also in Amstelveen, in the thing, and there was a big controversy. People said, this is nonsense. Now we are not in the snow anymore. Why should we do that? And I know a good friend of mine doesn't go to that synagogue in Amstelveen because he doesn't like the rule that you have to have a high top. But they still have high tops there.
And they have an ongoing service there.
Actually, I tell you the truth, in the synagogue in Amsterdam, they have only Shabbat and Sunday morning.
In Amstel?
In Amstelveen, they have every morning a service, but it's not the Portuguese of Amsterdam. There are Sephardim that came from Israel and living in Amsterdam, and they are the ones that make it moving. They make the minyan.
So it's not a Portuguese service?
Not Portuguese. Yeah, the Portuguese. They try to be. Actually, I was impressed the last time I was there on a Shabbat, that all these Oriental Sephardim knew our tunes very well. They sang it. They don't try to impose their own ways.
So it's partly Portuguese.
Yeah. But,
are the ladies and women allowed to sit at the bima to read the Torah? Because I was at Curacao in December, and once a lady was preparing for a bat mitzvah, exercising.
Curacao is a reformed synagogue now. I don't know when it switched over, but that's a long time ago already. So, and but they still use the Portuguese there. When in Wilmington, it's funny. I'm living in Wilmington. There's no other Portuguese Jews there. They have a conservative synagogue. There was a new chazan coming for the conservative synagogue, living in the same street where I live, 2 blocks away, and his previous job was chazan in Curacao. So he knew all about it, and they also use Portuguese in the service, the Portuguese language.
In Wilmington?
The guy lived in Wilmington. Yeah, he came to Wilmington, but now, no. He's now. Then he, unfortunately, he passed away. But
yes, you mentioned the talit, the changes in the talit. Were there other changes also in the talit? The color of the talit, how it was put together, was it printing?
Oh, yeah.
What does it look like?
Yeah, the talit has corners. Actually, it has to do also with the noble ancestry. You see, if you go to the museum there, you see that they have talitot with embroidered corners on the 4 corners, with the weapon of the family in it, and you can see the noble weapon. And it became a practice in Amsterdam to have your talit, the corners of your talit embroidered. So my mother made them for me on my bar mitzvah, with the letters of my name and all that. And that talit, these corners I still have. And the talit fell apart, so I put them over on another talit. And actually, we don't say talit, we say talit. I want to correct myself. I have to be Portuguese here. There's one thing that I'm a little embarrassed about the talit. I wear it, see the corners are falling apart. I don't do it or use it regularly, only on the holidays. So I take it with me here when I do services on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. And then I have to put my talit over my head, and that Band-Aid is still on there. That's one of the talitot where I didn't remove it from. So I'm always embarrassed to put it up there so everybody could see it. And sometimes I think maybe I should turn it upside down so they won't see it. But that will comment on that anyway. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Is it always white?
Thank you. Okay, very good. All right.